My mom's boyfriend tried to force me into an adoption at my 17th birthday party and said I had to choose between agreeing or moving out, then announced I said yes when I never did, so I told everyone the truth about his lies. My 17F parents split when I was 11. The divorce took about a year to finalize. They've had a 50-50 custody arrangement since then. I spend Monday through Thursday with my mom and Thursday evening through Monday morning with my dad. It works out to roughly equal time. My mom started dating Tobias about 5 years ago. He moved in with her 3 years back. Tobias has 2 kids from his first marriage, a son who's 14 and a daughter who's 12. He only gets them every other weekend. His ex-wife has primary custody. From what I've gathered over the years, Tobias had some issues with alcohol when his kids were younger. He went through a rough patch where he wasn't showing up for his parenting time and missed some of their school events. His ex eventually took him back to court and got primary custody. Tobias has been sober for about 4 years now, which is good, but he still only gets limited time with his own children. The problem is that Tobias seems to think he can make up for lost time with his kids by inserting himself into my life. He's always trying to reorganize our custody schedule so that his weekends with his kids overlap with my time at mom's house. He wants us all to do activities together as one big family. I've made it clear I'm not interested. I have my own father. I don't need a replacement. Tobias doesn't seem to understand this concept. For context, Tobias runs a small contracting business. At least that's what he calls it. From what I can tell, he gets jobs here and there but nothing steady. My mom works full-time as a nurse. She does 12-hour shifts at the hospital. I know she pays most of the bills because I've heard them arguing about money more than once. Tobias insists his business is just going through a slow period and things will pick up. This has been the excuse for the past 2 years. My relationship with Tobias has never been great. He tries too hard. He comments on everything I do. He wants to know where I'm going, who I'm with, what time I'll be back, even when I'm just hanging out at mom's house during my regular custody time. He acts like he has authority over me. My mom lets him. She says he's just trying to be involved and I should appreciate having another adult who cares. I don't see it that way. To me, he's just some guy who lives in my mom's house and can't seem to accept that I already have a dad. The situation came to a head around my 17th birthday last month. For years, my parents managed to put aside their differences for my birthday. They would throw one party together, usually at a park or a restaurant, and both sides of the family would show up. It was actually nice. It was one day a year where I didn't feel like I was being split in half. This year was different. About 6 weeks before my birthday, my mom told me there would be 2 separate parties. One at Dad's house and one at hers. She said it would be better this way because then I could celebrate with each side of the family properly. I knew immediately this was Tobias's idea. He's been pushing for more separation between my 2 households since he moved in. He doesn't like my dad. He makes comments about him. He thinks my dad doesn't do enough or care enough. None of it is true. I tried to talk my mom out of the 2-party plan. I said I'd rather just have one party like always. She wouldn't budge. She said Tobias had already started planning something special for me at their house and she didn't want to disappoint him. That's when I knew for certain this wasn't about me. This was about Tobias wanting to play dad in front of his own kids and my mom's family. The first party was at my dad's house on the Saturday before my actual birthday. My dad invited my friends from school, my cousins from his side, and a few family friends. We had a barbecue in the backyard. My dad grilled burgers and hot dogs. My aunt made a chocolate cake from scratch because she knows it's my favorite. My friends came over and we played music and hung out by the fire pit until late. It was exactly what I wanted. Simple and comfortable. After that party, I told my mom I didn't need a second one. I said I was already celebrated and I'd rather just have a quiet dinner with her instead. She got upset. She said I was being ungrateful. She said Tobias had put a lot of effort into planning this party and I needed to show up and be polite. When I pushed back, she called me a brat. She said I was acting like a spoiled child who couldn't appreciate what people do for her. That wasn't fair. I just didn't want to sit through another birthday party that was really more about Tobias than about me. The second party was scheduled for the following Saturday at my mom's house. I showed up that afternoon with my overnight bag. I wasn't planning to stay the whole weekend. I figured I'd get through the party and then head back to Dad's. When I walked in, my mom and Tobias were both in the kitchen. They were acting strange. Too cheerful. Too welcoming. My mom kept asking if I was excited. Tobias kept saying he had a big surprise for me. I went to my room to drop off my bag. The house was already decorated. There were balloons and streamers in the living room. The dining table had a fancy tablecloth I'd never seen before. Everything looked planned and formal. It didn't feel like my kind of party. About an hour before guests were supposed to arrive, Tobias knocked on my door. He came in carrying a small gift box wrapped in silver paper. He sat down on my bed without asking. He told me he wanted to talk before everyone got there. He said he had something important to discuss. He handed me the box. I opened it. Inside was a necklace with a pendant that said family. It was the kind of generic jewelry you buy at a department store. I said, "Thank you." Tobias said there was more. He said the necklace represented something bigger. He said he wanted to make our family official. That's when he told me he wanted to adopt me. He said he'd been thinking about it for months. He said he loved me like his own daughter and he wanted it to be legal. He said my mom was on board. He said all I needed to do was agree and then my dad would have to sign paperwork giving up his parental rights. I stared at him. I didn't know what to say. This was insane. My dad has been in my life every single day since the divorce. He's never missed a school event. He's never skipped his custody time. He pays child support on time every month. There was no reason for him to give up his rights and no reason for Tobias to adopt me. I told Tobias no. I said I wasn't interested. Tobias's whole attitude changed. His face got hard. He leaned forward and said I needed to think carefully about this. He said the house we were sitting in was in his name. He said if I wasn't willing to be part of his family then maybe I shouldn't be living there anymore. He said I could either agree to the adoption or I could move in with my dad full time. I knew he was lying about the house. My mom's name is on the lease. I've seen the paperwork. Tobias likes to act like he's in charge of everything but the truth is he barely contributes. His business isn't bringing in enough money to cover rent and my mom has been carrying him for months. I didn't say any of this out loud. I just told him again that I wasn't agreeing to anything. Tobias stood up. He said I had until the end of the party to decide. Then he left my room. I sat there holding this stupid necklace. I wanted to leave right then but I didn't have a way to call my dad without Tobias or my mom noticing. About 10 minutes later, my mom came into my room. She asked if Tobias had talked to me. I said yes. She asked what I thought. I said I thought it was a terrible idea. My mom sighed. She said I was being difficult. She said Tobias just wanted to feel like a real father to me. She said it would mean a lot to him if I considered it. I told her I already had a father and I wasn't replacing him. My mom didn't argue but she also didn't leave. She stayed in my room, folding clothes and organizing things, basically making sure I couldn't slip out before guests arrived. The party started around 4 p.m. The guest list was not what I expected. None of my friends were there. It was Tobias's kids, a few neighbors I barely knew, and relatives from my mom's side. Specifically, the relatives who don't like my dad. My mom has 2 brothers and a sister. One of her brothers has always been cool with my dad even after the divorce. He didn't come to this party. The other brother and my aunt were there, along with their kids. These are the family members who stopped talking to my dad after the split. They've always been cold to me when I mention him. I went through the motions. I ate cake. I opened presents. I smiled when people talked to me. The whole time I was planning my exit. I figured once the party wound down I'd grab my bag and call my dad to pick me up. Then Tobias stood up to make a speech. He clinked his glass with a fork to get everyone's attention. He started talking about how proud he was to be part of my life. He said he'd watched me grow into a wonderful young woman. This was a lie. He'd only known me for 5 years and for most of that time I'd been avoiding him. He went on about how much he cared about me and how he wanted to make sure I knew I was loved and supported. Then he said it. He announced to the entire room that I had agreed to let him adopt me. He said we were going to make it official and that soon I'd legally be his daughter. He said he couldn't be happier. Everyone clapped. Tobias's kids looked confused but they smiled. My aunt hugged my mom. People came up to congratulate me. I stood there. I didn't move. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. I said I never agreed to anything. I said Tobias had come into my room earlier and threatened me. I said he told me I had to agree to the adoption or move out. I said he was lying about the house being in his name. I said my mom was the one paying rent and had been for months while Tobias's business continued to fail. The room went silent. Tobias's face turned red. My mom looked like she wanted to disappear. Tobias started to argue. He said I was being dramatic. He said I was twisting his words. I didn't let him finish. I said I was leaving. I went to my room, grabbed my bag, and walked out the front door. My mom followed me outside. She tried to stop me. She said I was ruining everything. She said I was embarrassing Tobias in front of his children and her family. I told her she should have thought about that before ambushing me. I called my dad. He answered right away. I asked him to come get me. He said he'd be there in 20 minutes. I waited at the end of the driveway. My mom stayed on the porch. She didn't come closer. Tobias stayed inside. When my dad pulled up, I got in the car. I didn't look back. Update 1: I didn't talk to my mom for 2 weeks after the party. She texted me every day. She called a few times. I ignored everything. My dad didn't push me to respond to her. He said I could take my time. He made sure I had everything I needed at his place. I went to school and came home and tried not to think about what happened. My mom finally showed up at my dad's house on a Wednesday evening. She knocked on the door. My dad answered. They talked on the porch for a few minutes and then my dad came to get me. He said my mom wanted to talk and it was up to me whether I was ready. I wasn't ready but I also knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I went outside. My mom apologized. She said she should have told me about the adoption plan before the party. She said Tobias convinced her it would be a nice surprise and she went along with it. She said she didn't know Tobias was going to threaten me or back me into a corner. She said she was sorry for calling me a brat and for not listening when I said I didn't want a second party. I accepted her apology, but I also told her I wasn't going back to her house if Tobias was there. I said I was done being put in the middle of whatever fantasy he was trying to create. I said if she wanted to have a relationship with me, it needed to be separate from him. My mom said that wasn't realistic. She said Tobias lived with her and they were a unit. She said I needed to find a way to get along with him. That's when I asked her to tell me the truth about something. I asked her why my dad's side of the family and her side barely speak to each other. I asked her why her brother and sister hate my dad so much. I'd been thinking about this since the party. The guest list wasn't random. My mom had invited the people who already disliked my dad. She'd set up an environment where nobody would question Tobias trying to replace him. My mom hesitated. She said it was complicated. I told her I was 17 and I deserved to know. She sighed. She said the divorce wasn't as clean as I thought it was. She told me that after she and my dad separated, she wanted to try counseling. She thought they could work things out. My dad agreed to go to a few sessions. My mom thought this meant he was open to reconciliation. She was wrong. While they were supposedly working on their marriage, my dad had already hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. He didn't tell her. She found out when she was served with papers at work. 2 weeks later, someone saw my dad on a date with another woman. That woman is now his girlfriend. They've been together for over 5 years. My mom said she felt blindsided. She said she'd been holding on to hope while my dad had already moved on. She said her family was furious on her behalf. Her brother and sister wanted her to fight for full custody. They thought my dad was cruel for leading her on. My mom did try to go for full custody right after the divorce was finalized. She didn't get it. The court kept the 50-50 arrangement. I didn't know any of this. My dad never mentioned that my mom wanted to reconcile. He never said he'd been seeing someone else while they were still legally married. I'd met his girlfriend plenty of times. She's always been nice to me. I never thought about the timeline of when they got together. I went back inside after my mom left. I didn't say anything to my dad that night. I needed time to process what I'd just learned. The next day after school, I asked my dad if we could talk. I told him I knew about the divorce. I told him what my mom had said. I asked him if it was true. My dad didn't deny it. He said he'd made a choice to move forward with his life instead of dragging things out. He said the marriage was over and he didn't see the point in pretending otherwise. He said he met his girlfriend after he'd already decided to file for divorce, even if the paperwork wasn't finished yet. He said he didn't think of it as cheating because he and my mom were already separated. I asked him why he agreed to go to counseling if he'd already made up his mind. He didn't have a good answer. He said he thought it might help them communicate better about co-parenting. He said he didn't realize my mom thought they were trying to fix the marriage. I sat with all of this information for a while. I started to understand why my mom's family acts the way they do around my dad. I started to see why my mom might have been drawn to someone like Tobias, who was overly eager to commit and be involved. I also started to feel like I'd been living with only half the story my whole life. A few days later, my mom called me. She asked if I'd thought about coming back to stay with her on my regular custody days. I told her I needed more time. She said she understood, but she also needed me to know something. She said she and Tobias were having problems. She said the party incident had brought up a lot of issues between them. She said Tobias had been lying to her about his business. Apparently, Tobias's business hasn't just been slow for a few months. It's been failing for over 2 years. He hasn't had a steady contract in 18 months. He's been taking small jobs here and there but barely making enough to cover his truck payment and insurance. My mom has been paying for everything else. Rent, utilities, groceries, all of it. Tobias told her his biggest client was about to sign a new contract and things would turn around. That client doesn't exist. My mom found out because she finally demanded to see his business accounts after I exposed his lie about the house at the party. My mom said she felt like an idiot. She said she'd been supporting Tobias financially while he played house and tried to push my real dad out of the picture. She said she was humiliated in front of her family and in front of Tobias's kids. She said they were going to counseling but she wasn't sure if it would help. I asked her if Tobias was still living with her. She said yes, but they were sleeping in separate rooms. She said his kids hadn't come over since the party. His ex-wife found out what happened and decided it wasn't a good environment for them right now. I didn't feel sorry for Tobias. I did feel a little sorry for my mom. She's been trying to build something that was never as solid as she thought it was. At the same time, I was still processing what she'd told me about my dad. I wasn't ready to go back to her house and pretend everything was normal. I told my mom I'd think about it. I said I wasn't making any promises. She said that was fair. She asked if we could at least have dinner together once a week, just the two of us, outside of the house. I agreed to that. We've been meeting at a diner near her work every Thursday. It's been okay. We don't talk about Tobias or my dad. We just eat and catch up on school and work. It's the most normal our relationship has felt in years. Update 2: Tobias moved out last month. My mom told me during one of our Thursday dinners. She said the counseling wasn't working. She said every session turned into an argument about money or about me or about his kids. The counselor suggested they take a break and Tobias agreed a little too quickly. He moved into an apartment across town. My mom said he took most of his stuff in one trip. She said it was like he'd been planning his exit for a while. I asked her if they were getting divorced. She said she didn't know yet. She said she needed time to figure out what she wanted. She said she felt embarrassed that she'd let things get this far. She said she should have seen the red flags earlier. I didn't disagree with her, but I also didn't pile on. She seemed like she was already beating herself up enough. With Tobias gone, my mom asked if I'd be willing to come back for my regular custody days. I said I'd try it. I went back the following week. The house felt different without Tobias there. It was quieter. My mom had taken down some of the decorations he'd put up and rearranged the furniture. She said she was making the space hers again. It felt less like I was walking into someone else's home and more like I was walking into my mom's place. That helped. Things were going okay for a few weeks. My mom and I were talking more. We watched movies together. She asked about school and actually listened to my answers instead of half paying attention while Tobias talked over me. I started to remember what it was like before Tobias moved in, when it was just the two of us figuring things out. Then my dad's girlfriend came up in conversation. We were eating dinner and my mom mentioned that she'd seen a post on social media from one of my dad's relatives. It was a photo from a family gathering. My dad and his girlfriend were in it. My mom made a comment about how long they'd been together. It wasn't mean, but it was pointed. I could tell she was still hurt about how things ended between her and my dad. I asked her why she never told me the full story about the divorce before. I said I'd spent years thinking my parents just grew apart and decided to split amicably. I said finding out the truth from her during an argument felt like another thing I'd been kept in the dark about. My mom said she didn't want me to resent my dad. She said she knew how important he was to me and she didn't want to poison that relationship. She said she thought it was better for me to have a good relationship with both parents than to know all the messy details. I told her I appreciated that, but it also made me feel like I couldn't trust either of them to be honest with me. I said I was old enough to handle the truth. My mom agreed. She said she should have told me sooner. She also said she wanted me to understand that people make mistakes and sometimes those mistakes hurt the people they love. She said my dad wasn't a bad person. He just made a choice that hurt her and she'd been carrying that hurt for a long time. I asked her if that's why she stayed with Tobias even when things weren't good. I asked if she was trying to prove something. My mom thought about it for a minute. Then she said maybe. She said after the divorce she felt like she'd failed at marriage. She said meeting Tobias felt like a second chance. She said she wanted it to work so badly that she ignored the problems until they were too big to ignore. We talked for a long time that night. Longer than we'd talked in years. My mom cried a little. I didn't. I just listened. I think that was what she needed. Someone to hear her without judging or trying to fix anything. A few days later, my dad asked if I wanted to talk about the divorce stuff. I guess my mom had called him and told him we'd been discussing it. I said I didn't have much to say. He apologized for not being more upfront with me when I was younger. He said he thought he was protecting me, but he realized now that it probably just made things more confusing. I accepted his apology. I also told him I thought it was a shitty thing to do to my mom, leading her on while he was already planning to leave. He didn't argue. He said he agreed and that he'd handled it poorly. I asked him if he ever regretted it. He said he regretted the way he did it, but he didn't regret leaving the marriage. He said he and my mom weren't good together at the end. He said staying would have been worse for everyone, including me. I don't know if I believe that, but I also wasn't there for the bad parts. I only remember the fighting and the tension before they separated. After the divorce, things did get calmer. My dad also told me that he'd always been willing to fight for custody if my mom tried to take it away. He said he didn't file for full custody after the party incident because he wanted me to have the option to repair my relationship with my mom. He said he knew I was mad at her, but he also knew I'd regret it if I cut her off completely. I didn't know if he was right, but I appreciated that he'd thought about it. Update 3: My mom filed for divorce from Tobias 3 weeks ago. She told me at one of our Thursday dinners. She said she'd thought about trying to make it work but realized there wasn't anything left to save. She said Tobias had been texting her asking for money. He said his business was finally picking up and he just needed a loan to get through the next month. My mom said no. Tobias stopped texting after that. The divorce should be quick since they were only married for a little over 2 years and there's no shared property. Tobias signed the papers without putting up a fight. My mom said he's already dating someone new. One of his employees. My mom didn't seem bothered by it. She said she was relieved more than anything. I asked her how his kids were doing. My mom said she didn't know. She said Tobias's ex-wife blocked her number after the party incident. She said she understood why. She said the whole situation was a mess and those kids didn't need to be dragged through it. My mom seemed genuinely sad about losing touch with them. She said they were good kids and she'd try to be a positive presence in their lives. I believed her. My mom isn't a bad person. She just made bad choices about who to tie herself to. Things have settled into a new routine. I'm back to the regular 50-50 custody schedule. I spend Monday through Thursday with my mom and Thursday evening through Monday morning with my dad. It's the same arrangement we've had since the divorce, but it feels different now. My mom's house is just her house. There's no one else trying to insert themselves into our time together. My dad's house is the same as it's always been. His girlfriend is around sometimes, but she's never tried to overstep. She respects that my dad and I have our own relationship. My mom and I are in a better place than we've been in years. We're honest with each other now. She doesn't try to sugarcoat things, and I don't hold back when something bothers me. It's not perfect, but it's real. That's what matters. I also have a better understanding of my dad. He's not the perfect parent I thought he was when I was younger. He made choices that hurt people. But he also shows up for me consistently. He pays attention. He doesn't try to rewrite history or pretend he's something he's not. I respect that even if I don't agree with everything he's done. I'm turning 18 in a few months. I'll be able to make my own decisions about where I spend my time without a custody agreement dictating it. I plan to keep splitting my time between both parents. Not because a court order says I have to, but because they're both my family. They're both flawed. They've both hurt each other and made mistakes. But they're also both trying. That's enough for me. I haven't seen or heard from Tobias since the party. I don't expect to. My mom said he asked about me once through a mutual friend. He wanted to know if I was okay. She told him I was fine and left it at that. I don't have anything to say to him. He tried to force himself into a role that was never his, and it blew up in his face. I don't feel bad about that. My mom and I had dinner last night. She told me she's been thinking about going back to school to get her nursing degree upgraded. She wants to become a nurse practitioner. She said she has time now that she's not managing someone else's problems. She seemed excited about it. I told her she should do it. She's good at her job and she deserves to move forward with her own life instead of being stuck. My dad's been talking about taking me on a trip this summer before I start college. Just the two of us. He wants to visit some national parks. I said yes. It'll be good to spend time with him without the weight of everything else hanging over us. I don't have a neat conclusion to any of this. My family is still messy. My parents still have history that affects how they interact with each other. But at least now I know the whole story. I'm not being protected from the truth or manipulated into taking sides. I can see both of them clearly and make my own judgments. That's all I really wanted. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I thought my live-in boyfriend loved me until I accidentally overheard him tell his roommate that living with me felt like having a mom instead of a girlfriend. He also confessed he'd been talking to another woman at work for months. I, 27F, have been with my boyfriend James, 29M, for 5 years now. We've been living together for the past 3 years in my apartment. I thought we had a solid relationship, but something happened last week that made me question everything. Let me give you some background first. James and I met through mutual friends at a barbecue party in 2020. He was working at a local electronics store at the time, and I had just started my job as a dental hygienist. We clicked immediately over our shared love of horror movies and terrible dad jokes. He was different from other guys I dated, quieter, more thoughtful. At least that's what I thought. Our relationship moved pretty normally at first. We started hanging out regularly, going to movies, trying new restaurants. He would come over to my place almost every weekend because his roommate situation was messy. His roommate Mark had gotten a girlfriend who basically moved in without paying rent, and James complained about it constantly. My apartment was peaceful compared to his place, so it made sense that he preferred spending time there. After about 2 years of dating, I started bringing up the idea of him moving in with me. My lease was coming up for renewal, and I figured it would save us both money and time since he was already at my place most nights anyway. The first few times I mentioned it, he would change the subject or give vague responses about timing not being right. But I kept bringing it up because it seemed logical. We were spending all our free time together, he was practically living there already, and his living situation was getting worse. Eventually, he agreed. I remember being so happy when he said yes. We went furniture shopping together, and I helped him pack up his stuff from Mark's place. It felt like a big step forward in our relationship. I thought we were building something real together. The first year of living together was pretty good. We fell into routines easily. I would wake up early for work since the dental office opened at 7, and he would leave for his shift at the electronics store around 9. We would cook dinner together most nights and watch Netflix shows. On weekends, we would go hiking or visit farmers markets. It felt comfortable and stable. But over the past year and a half, things started feeling different. James began spending more and more time on his phone or laptop when he got home from work. He would say he was just browsing Reddit or watching YouTube videos, but he seemed completely absorbed in whatever he was doing. Our dinner conversations became shorter. Weekend activities became less frequent. I started having to ask him multiple times to help with basic household tasks. Taking out the garbage, doing dishes, picking up groceries, everything required me to specifically request it. When I would bring this up, he would apologize and do better for a week or two, then go back to the same patterns. The physical closeness also changed. He stopped initiating hugs or casual touches. When we watched movies together on the couch, he would sit on the opposite end instead of cuddling like we used to. Our intimate life became almost non-existent unless I initiated everything. I started wondering if he was still attracted to me or if something was wrong with our relationship. I tried talking to him about these concerns several times over the past year. Each conversation would go the same way. He would listen, apologize, promise to make more effort, and things would improve temporarily before sliding back to the same distant pattern. I started wondering if this was just how long-term relationships worked, but something inside me knew this wasn't normal or healthy. Last Tuesday night, I decided to have another serious conversation with him. I waited until after dinner when we were both relaxed. I told him I had been thinking about our relationship and that I needed us to work on reconnecting. I explained how the distance between us was affecting me and that I missed the closeness we used to have. He listened without saying much, which was typical for these conversations. But then I asked him directly if he was happy living with me and if he saw a future for us together. That's when his whole demeanor changed. He got quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Then he started talking about how he never really wanted to move in with me in the first place. He said he felt pressured because I kept bringing it up and he didn't know how to say no without hurting my feelings. He admitted that he agreed to move in because it seemed easier than having difficult conversations about what he actually wanted. I sat there completely stunned. He continued explaining that he had been comfortable with how things were when we were just dating and he had his own place. He said living together felt too serious too fast, but he didn't know how to express that at the time. He told me he had been feeling trapped for the past year but didn't want to hurt me by bringing it up. The worst part was when he said he had been thinking about getting his own place again but was afraid of how I would react. He said he still cared about me but needed space to figure out what he actually wanted from our relationship. I asked him why he never told me any of this before, and he just shrugged. He said he thought his feelings might change over time and that maybe he would grow into wanting the same things I wanted. But apparently, that never happened. After that conversation, I went to bed early and barely slept. I kept replaying the past 3 years, wondering what was real and what was just him going along with what he thought I wanted. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee and asked what I wanted to watch on Netflix that evening. I spent the whole week thinking about what he told me. Every interaction we've had since then feels fake. When he helps with chores now, I wonder if he's just doing it to keep the peace. When he sits next to me on the couch, I question whether he actually wants to be there or if he's just going through the motions. The thing that bothers me most is that I feel like I forced him into this living situation without realizing it. I thought I was communicating about what I wanted in our relationship, but apparently, I was just pressuring him into something he didn't want. I never would have wanted him to move in if I had known he wasn't genuinely interested. Now I don't know what to do. Do I ask him to move out so he can have the space he apparently needs? Do I try to work through this together? I feel like our entire relationship has been built on a misunderstanding, and I don't know how to fix that. Part of me wants to end things because I can't stand the idea that he's been silently resenting our living situation for years. But another part of me wonders if we can work through this if we're more honest with each other going forward. I haven't talked to any of my friends or family about this because I'm embarrassed that I apparently missed such a huge issue in my own relationship. I thought we communicated well, but clearly, we don't. Has anyone else been in a situation like this? How do you recover from finding out that your partner has been fundamentally unhappy with your relationship but never told you? I feel like I don't know who James really is anymore, and I don't know if what we had was ever real. Update 1: I wanted to update everyone who commented on my original post. Your responses really helped me see the situation more clearly, so thank you for that. After I posted 3 weeks ago, I decided to give James some space to think about what he really wanted. I told him he didn't need to make any immediate decisions, but that I needed him to be completely honest with me going forward. I said I would rather deal with difficult truths than continue living in a relationship built on assumptions and miscommunication. For about a week, things were awkward but civil. He started making more effort around the apartment, probably because he realized how serious the situation had become. He would ask if I wanted to watch specific shows together instead of just defaulting to whatever was on. He even suggested we go out for dinner one night, which hadn't happened in months. But I could tell he was still thinking everything over. He would get this distant look sometimes, especially when we were doing couple-like activities. It was like he was evaluating whether he actually enjoyed what we were doing or if he was just participating out of habit. Then last Friday, something happened that changed everything. I came home from work early because we had a cancellation at the dental office. James's car was in the parking lot, but when I got upstairs, I could hear him talking to someone. I figured he was on a work call since he sometimes handled customer service issues from home. As I got closer to the apartment door, I realized he was talking to Mark, his old roommate. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but our walls are thin and they were talking pretty loudly. What I heard completely shocked me. James was telling Mark that he had been thinking about moving back in with him. Mark had broken up with his girlfriend a few months ago, so the apartment situation had improved. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was how James was describing our relationship to Mark. He told Mark that living with me had been like having a mom instead of a girlfriend. He said I was always organizing things and making plans and that he felt like he couldn't just relax in his own home. He complained that I asked too many questions about his day and wanted to do activities together on weekends when he preferred to just stay in and do his own thing. The worst part was when he said he had never been physically attracted to me the way he was to girls he dated before me. He told Mark that our intimate life felt like an obligation and that he had been avoiding it as much as possible without causing problems. He also said he had been talking to his coworker Emma for the past few months and that she had been flirting with him. He told Mark he was curious about what it would be like to date someone else but felt stuck because we lived together and breaking up would be complicated. I stood outside the door for probably 10 minutes listening to him describe our entire relationship like it was some burden he had been carrying. When he finally got off the phone, I waited a few more minutes before opening the door so he wouldn't know I had heard everything. That night, I didn't bring up what I had overheard. I wanted to see how he would act knowing what I now knew about his real feelings. He was actually more affectionate than usual, probably because his conversation with Mark had made him feel guilty. He suggested we order pizza from our favorite place and asked if I wanted to pick the movie. The whole evening felt like a performance. Every time he smiled at me or made conversation, I knew it wasn't genuine. He was going through the motions of being a good boyfriend while secretly planning his exit strategy and talking to other women. I spent the weekend pretending everything was normal while internally processing what I had learned. By Sunday night, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I knew about his conversation with Mark. His face went completely white. He started to deny it at first, but I told him exactly what I had heard. Then he got defensive and said I had no right to listen to his private conversations. I pointed out that I hadn't been trying to eavesdrop and that maybe he shouldn't have such conversations in our shared living space if he wanted privacy. He eventually admitted that everything I heard was true. He said he had been unhappy for a long time but didn't know how to end things without hurting me. He claimed he still cared about me as a person but that we weren't compatible as romantic partners. I asked him about Emma, and he said they had just been friendly but that he was interested in exploring that connection. He said he had never cheated on me, but he admitted he had been emotionally checking out of our relationship while maintaining the appearance of commitment. The conversation lasted until almost midnight. He kept apologizing and saying he should have been honest sooner. He offered to sleep on the couch and start looking for a new place immediately. He said he would understand if I never wanted to see him again after this. I told him he was right about needing to move out, but that I needed time to process everything before deciding how to handle the logistics. I said I felt betrayed not just by his dishonesty, but by the fact that he had let me believe we were working toward a future together when he was actually planning his escape. Since that conversation, he has been staying at Mark's place most nights. He comes by to get clothes and check his mail, but we haven't had any meaningful conversations. He texts me occasionally to ask about practical things like bills or apartment maintenance, but otherwise, we're not really communicating. I found out from a mutual friend that he and Emma have been seen together around town. They're not officially dating yet, but apparently, they've been hanging out outside of work. It hurts to know that he moved on so quickly, but it also confirms that his interest in our relationship had been dead for much longer than I realized. I'm planning to ask him to come get the rest of his stuff this weekend. I think we both know this relationship is over, but we haven't formally acknowledged it yet. Part of me wants closure and answers, but another part of me thinks I already know everything I need to know. The hardest part is realizing that almost everything about our relationship for the past year was fake. He was pretending to be invested while secretly resenting me and looking for alternatives. I keep wondering what other things he lied about or went along with just to avoid conflict. Update 2. I know it's been a while since my last update, but I wanted to wait until things settled down before writing again. A lot has happened since James started staying at Mark's place. 2 weeks after my last post, James came by to collect more of his belongings. I had expected it to be awkward but straightforward. Instead, he surprised me by asking if we could talk. He said he had been thinking about our conversation and wanted to explain his side of things better. He sat down at my kitchen table and told me he realized he had handled everything poorly. He said he never meant to deceive me and that he genuinely thought his feelings might change over time. He claimed he had convinced himself that his doubts about our relationship were normal and that all couples went through periods of uncertainty. Then he said something that really caught me off guard. He told me that his mother had been asking him when he was going to propose to me. Apparently, she had been dropping hints for months about how we were the perfect age to get engaged and that I seemed like good wife material. He said the pressure from his family made him feel even more trapped because they all assumed we were heading toward marriage. He also revealed that several of our mutual friends had made comments about us being such a stable couple and how lucky we were to have found each other so young. He said all these outside opinions made it harder for him to admit to himself that he wasn't happy, because everyone else seemed to think we were perfect together. I asked him why he never talked to me about feeling pressured by other people's expectations. He said he didn't want to hurt my feelings by suggesting that what other people saw as relationship goals actually felt suffocating to him. He was afraid that if he admitted his doubts, I would think he was rejecting me personally rather than just questioning the relationship dynamic. During this conversation, he also told me more about Emma. They had started talking during breaks at work about 6 months ago. At first, it was just casual conversation, but he said he found himself looking forward to those interactions more than coming home to me. He claimed nothing physical happened between them while we were together, but he admitted he had developed feelings for her. He said Emma represented everything he felt was missing from our relationship. She was more spontaneous, didn't ask him to make plans or commitments, and seemed content to just enjoy their time together without expectations about the future. He said being around her reminded him of how relationships felt in the beginning before they became serious and complicated. I listened to everything he said without interrupting. When he finished, I told him I appreciated his honesty but that it didn't change anything. I said I understood that he felt pressured by outside expectations, but that didn't excuse him from lying to me for years about his true feelings. I pointed out that I couldn't make informed decisions about our relationship if he wasn't giving me accurate information about where he stood. He asked if there was any chance we could work things out. He said he missed certain aspects of our relationship and wondered if we could try being together without the pressure of living together or planning a future. Basically, he wanted to go back to casual dating. I told him no. I explained that I wasn't interested in a relationship with someone who needed to sneak around and explore other options before deciding if I was worth committing to. I said I deserved to be with someone who chose me enthusiastically, not someone who settled for me because other options didn't work out. That conversation was 3 weeks ago, and it was the last real discussion we had. He finished moving his stuff out the following weekend. I helped him load boxes into Mark's truck, and we were polite but distant with each other. Since then, I found out from our mutual friend Lisa that James and Emma are officially dating now. Lisa said they've been posting pictures together on social media and that Emma even met James's family last weekend. It stung to learn that he introduced someone new to his parents just weeks after ending a 5-year relationship with me, but it also confirmed that I made the right decision. The most surprising development happened 2 weeks ago. James's mother called me. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, but I'm glad I did. She said James had told the family about our breakup, but his explanation didn't make sense to her. She wanted to hear my side of what happened. I gave her a brief version of events without going into too much detail about James's behavior. I focused on the fact that we had different expectations for the relationship and that we realized we weren't compatible long term. I didn't mention Emma or the fact that James had been dishonest with me for years. His mother surprised me by saying she had suspected James wasn't as happy as he pretended to be. She said he always seemed tense when they asked about our relationship and that his answers about our future plans were always vague. She apologized for any pressure she might have put on him about proposing and said she hoped I would find someone who appreciated me properly. That phone call was actually really healing for me. It helped me realize that other people had noticed James's ambivalence even when I missed it. It also made me feel less like I had imagined problems that didn't exist. I've been focusing on getting back to activities I enjoyed before James and I lived together. I started taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings and joined a hiking group that meets on Saturday mornings. It's been nice to remember what I like to do when I'm not trying to accommodate someone else's preferences or schedule. My apartment feels different now too. I rearranged the furniture and redecorated the bedroom. I got rid of things that reminded me of James and replaced them with items that reflect my personal taste. It's smaller and quieter than when 2 people lived here, but it also feels more authentically mine. I still think about the relationship sometimes, but mostly I feel relieved. The constant undercurrent of tension and uncertainty is gone. I don't have to wonder if James really wants to do activities with me or if he's just going along with my suggestions. I don't have to analyze his body language to figure out if he's actually enjoying our time together. Update 3. I wanted to give one final update since so many people have been following the situation. It's been 4 months since James moved out, and I feel like I can finally close this chapter of my life. The biggest news is that James and Emma broke up about 6 weeks ago. I found out through Lisa, who heard it from Mark. Apparently, their relationship moved very fast initially, but then James started having the same issues with Emma that he had with me. He began pulling away when she started wanting to spend more time together and make plans for the future. According to Lisa, Emma got frustrated with James's hot and cold behavior and ended things. She told him she wasn't interested in dating someone who couldn't decide what he wanted from a relationship. It sounds like James has a pattern of being excited about new relationships until they require actual commitment or effort. After Emma broke up with him, James apparently tried to reach out to me. He sent a few text messages over the course of a week asking if we could meet for coffee to talk. I didn't respond to any of them. Then he showed up at my apartment building one evening about a month ago. I saw him from my window and decided not to buzz him up. After about 20 minutes of him waiting in the lobby, he finally left. He sent me one more text that night saying he missed me and had made a mistake. I blocked his number after that. Lisa told me that James has been telling people he regrets how things ended between us. He apparently said he realized too late that what we had was actually good, and that his issues were about his own commitment problems rather than problems with me specifically. But I'm not interested in being someone's backup plan or their lesson in appreciating what they had. The most satisfying part of this whole experience happened 2 months ago. I was at a coffee shop near my work when James's mother walked in. I had seen her a few times over the years when James and I were together, but we had never spent much time alone together. She approached my table and asked if she could sit down for a few minutes. She told me that James had been struggling since Emma broke up with him and that he had admitted to his family that he made a huge mistake with me. She said he had finally been honest about how he handled our relationship and that the whole family was disappointed in his behavior. Then she said something that really surprised me. She told me that after talking to me on the phone months earlier, she had started paying more attention to how James treated the people in his life. She said she noticed that he had a pattern of taking advantage of people's kindness without reciprocating, and that she was working on addressing this with him. She apologized again for any role she might have played in pressuring James about our relationship. She said she hoped I was doing well and that I seemed much happier and more confident than the last time she had seen me with James. That observation meant a lot to me because it confirmed that I had been diminishing myself to accommodate his indifference. In terms of my own life, things have been going really well. The pottery class led to me joining an art studio where I rent space to work on larger projects. I've made several friends through the hiking group, and we've started planning some weekend camping trips for the spring. Last month, I also got promoted at the dental office. My boss offered me a position as office manager, which comes with better pay and more responsibility. I probably wouldn't have pursued career advancement as aggressively if I had still been focused on accommodating James's schedule and preferences. I've been on a few dates with different people, but I'm not in a rush to get into another serious relationship. I want to make sure I don't fall into the same patterns of over-accommodating or ignoring red flags because I'm invested in making things work. The biggest thing I learned from this experience is that someone can care about you as a person while still being completely wrong for you as a partner. James probably did care about me in his own way, but he was never genuinely excited about building a life together. He was content to let me do the emotional labor of maintaining our relationship while he passively went along with whatever I suggested. I also learned that I need to pay attention to people's actions over their words. James said he wanted to work on our relationship problems, but his behavior showed that he was already mentally checked out. When someone shows you who they are consistently over time, it's important to believe them rather than hoping they'll change. For anyone going through something similar, my advice is to trust your instincts when something feels off in your relationship. I spent months making excuses for James's behavior and trying to fix problems that were really just symptoms of his lack of genuine investment. I wish I had been more honest with myself about what I was seeing instead of trying to convince myself that everything was fine. I'm grateful for everyone who commented on my posts and shared their own experiences. Reading about other people's similar situations helped me feel less alone and gave me confidence in my decision to end things with James. It's been a difficult few months, but I'm in a much better place now than I was when I was trying to force a relationship with someone who didn't really want to be there.